I want you to do something for me right now. Stop what you are doing and swallow once. Just once. Pay attention. Do you feel it? That thickness sitting at the back of your throat like something is stuck there? That coating that no amount of coughing, clearing, or water seems to wash away? Now think about this honestly. How many times have you cleared your throat today? 10 times? 20? 50? And if I asked you when this started, could you actually pinpoint the moment? Most people cannot, because it did not arrive all at once. It crept in slowly. First, it was just a morning thing, then it followed you into the afternoon, and now it is simply part of who you are. You carry a water bottle everywhere. You excuse yourself in conversations. You have tried ginger, turmeric, steam inhalation, honey, and probably a dozen things your family swore would fix it. And yet nothing has changed. Here you are, still clearing your throat as you listen to this right now. Here's what I need you to understand today. That mucus is not meaningless. It is not just something that happens because you are getting older. Your body does not waste energy on random symptoms. Every persistent signal your body sends is a message, a very specific message. And the only reason this has not been resolved for you is that no one has taken the time to properly decode what your body is actually telling you. Today, I am going to decode it for you. I'm going to walk you through 5 specific, research-documented causes of persistent throat mucus in adults over 55. But I am not just going to list them and leave you guessing. I am going to tell you which 2 of these 5 causes are almost certainly operating together in your body right now, because they nearly always pair up. And when they do, they create a cycle that makes everything dramatically, measurably worse. A cycle that no amount of throat clearing will ever break. My commitment to this community is always the same. Plain language, real research, practical steps you can begin implementing tonight, not next month, not after an expensive specialist visit, tonight. Before we go further, I want you to drop a comment right now and tell me this. Is your throat mucus worse when you first wake up in the morning, or does it stay constant all day long? Your answer to that single question reveals more about what is driving this problem than you might imagine. Write morning or write all day. I read every single comment, and your answer genuinely helps me understand what this audience is experiencing. Now let us start with the piece of biology that changes everything, the piece that most people have never been told and that reframes this entire problem. Your body produces mucus every single day, constantly, around the clock. And that is not a malfunction. That is your body doing exactly what it is supposed to do. Mucus is the protective shield for your entire airway system. It traps bacteria before they reach your lungs. It catches dust particles, viruses, pollutants. It keeps the delicate tissue lining your throat and nasal passages moist, flexible, and resilient. Without mucus, your airways would dry out, crack open, and become defenseless against every single pathogen in your environment. So mucus itself is never the enemy. The question is what happens to that mucus? And here's what the research shows clearly, but what almost no one explains to patients. Inside your airways, there is a system called mucociliary clearance. The lining of your respiratory tract is covered in millions of microscopic hair-like structures called cilia. These tiny structures beat in coordinated waves thousands of times per minute, sweeping mucus upward and outward. In a healthy, younger system, this clearance is so efficient that you never notice mucus at all. It gets produced, swept away, and swallowed without you ever being aware of it. But studies have confirmed repeatedly that as we age, these cilia slow down. They beat less frequently. They become less coordinated. The result is that mucus, which would have been cleared in seconds at age 35, can sit and pool for hours at age 60 or 70. It thickens, it accumulates, and you feel it sitting there, heavy and stubborn at the back of your throat. This means that in an older adult, any factor that increases mucus production even slightly will have a far greater impact than it would in a younger person. Because the clearance system that should be handling it is no longer operating at full capacity. This is not a criticism of aging, it is simply the physiology, and understanding it is the foundation for everything I am about to explain. With that context clearly in place, here are the 5 causes, and I want you to listen carefully because I am going to show you how they connect and compound each other. Cause number 1. This is the one I want you to pay the closest attention to because clinical research consistently identifies it as the single most frequently missed explanation for persistent throat mucus in this age group. It is called laryngopharyngeal reflux. You may have never heard that term in your life. Let me break it down in plain language. Most people know about heartburn, that burning sensation in the chest after eating too much or eating something heavy. That is classic gastroesophageal reflux. Acid comes up into the esophagus, you feel the burn, you take an antacid, it settles. But there is another version of this problem, a silent version, one that produces no burning, no chest discomfort, no obvious digestive symptoms whatsoever. The only sign it leaves behind is a throat that constantly feels coated, irritated, and congested. Here is the mechanism. At the top of your stomach, where it connects to your esophagus, there is a muscular ring, a valve. Its job is simple. Stay closed after you eat so that stomach acid stays exactly where it belongs. But as we age, this valve gradually loses its tone. Like a door hinge that has been opened and closed thousands of times over decades, it stops sealing as tightly as it once did. When that valve fails to close completely, stomach acid travels upward, not just into the lower esophagus where you might feel heartburn, but all the way up, past the upper esophagus, into the throat, onto the vocal cords, sometimes even into the back of the nasal passages. Now here is the critical detail. The lining of your esophagus has some built-in resistance to acid. It encounters small amounts regularly and can tolerate it to a degree. But the tissues of your throat and voice box have no such protection. They are exquisitely sensitive. Even the tiniest trace of acid reaching your throat triggers an immediate defensive response. Your body floods that area with thick, protective mucus to coat and shield the irritated tissue. This is intelligent biology. Your body is trying to protect itself. But when this cycle repeats night after night after night, while you sleep completely unaware, you wake up every single morning with that familiar heaviness, that thick, stubborn coating at the back of your throat. And because there is no heartburn, no chest pain, no obvious stomach discomfort, you never once think to look at your digestive system as the source. Research published in clinical otolaryngology journals has confirmed that up to half of people with this condition report absolutely no heartburn whatsoever. Their only symptoms are chronic throat clearing, morning hoarseness, a voice that sounds rough or gravelly when they first wake up, and mucus that seems to appear from nowhere. Ask yourself these questions honestly. Is your throat dramatically worse in the first hour after waking than it is later in the day? Does it worsen when you bend forward, like when tying your shoes or picking something up from the floor? Has your voice sounded different in the mornings? Do you sometimes have a sour or metallic taste at the back of your mouth when you wake? These are the fingerprints of silent reflux, and I will give you specific steps to address this when we reach the action plan. One additional detail here that is directly relevant to many people in this audience. If you regularly take anti-inflammatory pain medications for joint pain or arthritis, ibuprofen, naproxen, or similar medications, peer-reviewed research has established clearly that these medications reduce the protective lining of the stomach. This makes reflux, including the silent variety, significantly more likely to develop or worsen. If you take these medications consistently and your throat has been persistently bothered, please bring that specific connection to your doctor. It is a conversation worth having. Before we continue, take a moment and tell me your name and where you are watching from in the comments. I go through every single one, and I genuinely want to know who this community is and where you are tuning in from. Cause number 2. This one tends to arrive so quietly that most people never identify it for what it is. When people imagine sinus problems, they picture the obvious version: intense facial pressure, a throbbing headache behind the eyes, a nose so blocked you cannot breathe through it at all. The classic, unmistakable sinus infection. But in many adults over 55, chronic sinus inflammation looks nothing like that picture. Breathing feels mostly normal, no dramatic headache, no obvious congestion. And yet the sinuses, mildly inflamed and producing slightly more mucus than they should, are quietly and steadily draining down the back of the throat, all day, all night, without announcing themselves. This is called postnasal drip, and a 2024 clinical study confirmed that the average age of patients presenting with this condition is exactly 55 years old. That is not a coincidence. This is your age group. This is your problem. Here is the frustrating part. Many people dealing with this have been purchasing antihistamine tablets from the pharmacy for months, sometimes years, assuming it must be allergies. Seasonal allergies, dust allergies, something in the air. And there is a very specific reason that strategy tends to disappoint. Antihistamines work by drying mucus temporarily. They reduce the fluid content, but they do absolutely nothing to address the underlying inflammation inside the sinuses that is causing the excess production in the first place. And here's what makes it worse. Dried, thickened mucus trapped at the back of your throat is often more uncomfortable, more noticeable, and harder to clear than the thinner mucus you started with. So people take antihistamines, feel temporarily different, and then feel worse than before, and they assume nothing works. The approach with the most consistent and robust research support is something remarkably simple: regular nasal irrigation using a warm saline solution. A 2025 clinical review published in the journal Medicina, which analyzed evidence across a wide range of sinonasal conditions, concluded that nasal irrigation is an effective, safe, and low-cost strategy for treating and preventing upper respiratory tract problems. It is widely endorsed as a first-line adjunctive treatment by ear, nose, and throat specialists internationally. Here is why it works so well. High-volume saline rinses physically flush out inflammatory mucus that has been sitting in the sinuses. They reduce swelling in the nasal lining, and crucially, they support and improve the natural cilia clearance function we discussed earlier, the very system that slows down with age. You are essentially giving that system external assistance, but the single most important word in all of this is consistency. 1 or 2 uses will give you 1 or 2 days of mild, temporary relief. That is not enough to judge whether it works. Daily practice, applied correctly and maintained over at least 2 full weeks, produces cumulative, meaningful, lasting improvement. I will walk you through the exact method step by step in the action plan. If you are still with me and this is making sense, type the number 2 in the comments so I know you are here. And if you have not subscribed yet, take a moment to do that now. Your support allows this content to continue reaching people who need it. Now, cause number 3. This is where I consistently see the most surprise on people's faces. Because when we begin discussing what might be driving their throat symptoms, their medications, the ones they have been taking faithfully and without question for months or years, are simply not something they think to examine. There is a class of blood pressure medications called ACE inhibitors, angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitors. These are among the most commonly prescribed medications in the world. They are effective at controlling blood pressure. They are generally well tolerated. They serve a genuinely important cardiovascular purpose, but they carry a recognized, well-documented, class-wide side effect. They allow a substance called bradykinin to accumulate in the body, and in a significant proportion of users, studies report between 5 and 20%. That accumulation triggers persistent throat irritation, a dry, tickling sensation, and an ongoing, relentless urge to clear the throat. This is not an allergy. This is not your body reacting abnormally. This is simply how the medication works at a biochemical level, and your throat tissues happen to be sensitive to the effect. Here is the detail that causes this connection to be missed so frequently. The side effect does not appear immediately. It can take weeks or even months to develop after starting the medication. So if you began a blood pressure pill 9 months ago and your throat started bothering you 6 months ago, you may never have connected those 2 events in your mind. They feel separate. But that delayed timeline is exactly the pattern the research describes. A large-scale study analyzing more than 27,000 patients found that adults over the age of 65 had a 53% higher odds of experiencing this specific throat side effect compared to younger users of the same medications. This is not a rare reaction in this age group. It is common, and it is commonly missed. If you take a blood pressure medication and you are not certain whether it belongs to this class, your pharmacist can tell you in under 60 seconds. It is a simple question with a simple answer. And if your medication is indeed an ACE inhibitor, there are alternative medication categories called ARBs, angiotensin receptor blockers, that control blood pressure equally effectively and do not carry this specific side effect. That is a conversation worth having with your prescribing doctor. Not a confrontation, not a demand, simply an informed question. Could my medication be contributing to my throat symptoms, and is there an equivalent alternative? If you are still watching and this is giving you clarity, type the word clarity in the comments, because that is exactly what I want this to give you. Now, here's the connection I promised you earlier. The 2 causes that almost always work together. In my experience, and the research supports this clearly, causes 1 and 4, silent reflux and chronic mild dehydration, operate as a pair in the vast majority of older adults dealing with persistent throat mucus. Here's why. When you are even mildly dehydrated, your mucus becomes thicker, stickier, harder for those aging, slowing cilia to clear. So it accumulates, it sits. And at the same time, if silent reflux is irritating your throat overnight, your body is producing extra mucus as a protective response. That extra mucus is also thick because you have been sleeping for hours without any fluid intake. These two factors feed each other in a vicious cycle. The reflux creates excess mucus. The dehydration makes that mucus thick and immovable. The thick mucus sits on already irritated tissue. The irritation triggers more mucus production, and round it goes, night after night, morning after morning. This is why addressing only one cause rarely produces satisfying results. You must address the combination. And the action plan I am going to give you does exactly that. Cause number 4, hydration. This one surprises people not because it is complicated, but because they have dismissed it as too simple to be significant. Everyone knows they should drink water. But let me give you the actual physiology because this is not what most people think it is. Your mucus is predominantly water. Its consistency, whether it flows thin and clear or sits thick and sticky and refuses to move, is directly determined by the hydration state of the surrounding tissues. Here is the clearest analogy I can offer. Think of honey fresh from the jar on a warm day. It flows easily. Now think of that same honey left open in the refrigerator overnight. It becomes thick, sluggish, almost impossible to pour. Same substance, completely different behavior based on conditions. Your mucus behaves in precisely the same way depending on your hydration. Now here's the aging-specific detail that elevates this beyond a simple reminder to drink more water. Research has established clearly and repeatedly that the thirst mechanism becomes significantly less reliable with age. A younger adult feels thirsty well before they reach a state of meaningful dehydration. Their body alerts them early. But in older adults, that early warning system is blunted, dulled. You can be dehydrated enough to noticeably affect your mucus consistency, your energy, your cognitive clarity, and your physical comfort without feeling particularly thirsty at all. This means that if you wait until you feel thirsty to drink, you are consistently operating behind the curve. You are already dehydrated by the time the signal arrives. And a mildly dehydrated state maintained day after day after day keeps your mucus persistently thick in ways that amplify every other cause we have discussed. A practical fluid target, referenced widely in clinical nutrition guidance, is approximately 30 milliliters per kilogram of body weight per day from all sources. Water, herbal teas, soups, broths, and water-rich foods all contribute. But the behavioral key, the thing that actually makes the difference, is deliberate, consistent, scheduled intake throughout the entire day. Not catching up in the evening, not drinking a large amount all at once. Steady, distributed hydration from morning to night. If you are still here with me and this is landing, type number 4 in the comments. And if you have not subscribed yet, please hit that button and the notification bell so you are alerted when the next video drops. The 5th cause is one that I rarely see discussed in conversations like this one. And I believe that is a significant gap. Because for a meaningful proportion of older adults dealing with persistent throat mucus, the root of the problem is not located in the throat, not in the sinuses, not even in the stomach. It is in the gut. Here is what the research shows. Your digestive tract and your respiratory system are not separate, isolated systems. They share regulatory pathways through both the immune system and the nervous system. The health of your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your intestines, directly influences how reactive and how inflamed your upper airways become. When the balance of the gut microbiome is disrupted, a state researchers call dysbiosis, it can activate immune pathways that promote mucus overproduction in the airways. Not because there is anything physically wrong with your throat or lungs, but because your gut is sending inflammatory signals that your respiratory system interprets and responds to. This connection is called the gut-lung axis. It is an active and rapidly growing area of clinical research. Multiple peer-reviewed studies, including research published in the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine and the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology, have confirmed that gut microbiome disruption can trigger immune responses that promote airway inflammation and excessive mucus production. Animal studies have taken this even further. When mice received gut microbiome transplants from patients with chronic respiratory conditions, those mice developed measurably increased airway mucus production. Not because anything changed in their lungs directly, but because the disrupted gut bacteria triggered immune signals that the airways responded to. A direct, demonstrable causal link between what lives in your gut and what happens in your throat. What disrupts the gut microbiome in older adults? A diet low in fiber and fermented foods. Repeated courses of antibiotics accumulated over years and decades. High sugar intake. Chronic unmanaged stress. Sedentary lifestyle. These are not unusual or exotic factors. They describe the daily reality of a very large proportion of adults in this age group. You will never fix a gut-lung axis problem with a throat lozenge. You will never clear it with cough drops or steam. But you can begin supporting and rebuilding your gut microbiome through consistent, specific daily choices. And I will include exactly what those choices are in the action plan. Before I give you the full action plan, I need to pause for something genuinely important. Most of the time, persistent throat mucus in older adults is exactly what we have been discussing today. Benign, addressable, manageable through the right understanding and the right daily habits. But your body sometimes uses symptoms to signal something that requires professional medical evaluation, not self-management. Please make an appointment with your doctor promptly if you notice any of the following. Mucus that is consistently tinged with blood, even a small amount. Difficulty swallowing that is gradually worsening over time. Unexplained weight loss occurring alongside your throat symptoms. A lump or persistent swelling in your neck that was not there before. A significant change in your voice that is not resolving on its own. These signs go beyond the territory of today's conversation. They require proper clinical investigation. Please do not try to work around them. Bring them to your doctor directly. Now. The action plan. This is where everything we have discussed becomes something you can implement, starting tonight. Step 1. Stop eating at least 3 full hours before you lie down to sleep. When you eat and immediately recline, your stomach is still actively processing food, and the weakened valve we discussed has its most difficult time staying closed. 3 hours of upright time after your last meal is one of the most consistently evidence-supported behavioral steps for reducing nighttime silent reflux. Tonight, 3 hours. No food after that cutoff. Step 2. Elevate the head of your bed slightly, not with extra pillows under your head, which simply bends your neck and can actually worsen reflux by compressing your abdomen. Instead, place a firm wedge under the mattress at the head end, or place solid blocks under the headboard legs. Even a modest incline of 15 to 20 centimeters uses gravity to your advantage and meaningfully reduces the amount of acid that can travel toward your throat while you sleep. Step 3. Tonight before bed, drink a full glass of warm water. Not cold, warm. This simple action supports overnight hydration, helps keep your mucus thinner through the hours of sleep, and reduces the severity of that morning accumulation you have been waking to every single day.